to another video by the Youth Political Activism channel. Today we're going to be discussing about the power of money in government, the influence that lobbyists have, super PACs, all these different institutions that infiltrate our government. So, just with some background, greed is something that appears in every social construct that we create as humans because, as humans we're flawed, we can't be objective, we have emotions that play into greed, and government and corporations are human entities that aren't infallible to greed and other human flaws. And so a lot of the times our representatives put their own emotions and selfishness over logic and morals. And that's what leads to a lot of government corruption and power, the power of corporations and government. So just some information, background on the government. A lot of you probably already know this, but if you don't, government is the people who run a society. Politics is how the power in government is distributed. The U.S. is a constitutional democratic republic. That means that we elect representatives to carry on our views to the nation's capital instead of a direct democracy where every individual votes on every single bill. A lot of people nowadays complain about how ineffective the U.S. government is, and imagine how ineffective it would be if every single member of the United States, or every citizen rather, would have to vote on every single bill that goes to the Senate or the Congress. That'd be completely inefficient and we would get nothing done. And that's why we elect representatives to represent our huge country, versus in smaller countries or rather towns and cities may have direct democracies where local bills are voted upon by the entire town because there's so few people. And then autocracies, totalitarian governments, oligarchies. These are all leaders of those types of governments. They're different from what we're going to be talking about today, obviously. And then special interest groups and lobbyists. They're groups who want influence in the government, and they get that through power. So they pay a congressperson or any person who has a elected position. They pay them in order to fund their campaigns. The politician keeps their job and by getting the money, and then the lobbyist or corporation gets their what they want to get passed in the institution. And then PACs and super PACs abide by different laws, but they're pretty similar. This explains it pretty well. Lobbyists really have Democrats and Republicans alike wrapped around their fingers. And I'm going to be providing examples of this later, but just another example. If, for example, one of the biggest corporations that makes weapons, say missiles and stuff, if they want to stay in business, as every corporation does in a capitalistic society, which we are, if they want to keep in business and they want to keep making money, they want a business for missiles. And so they're going to have their representatives in Congress and people in Congress vote on going to war in certain situations. So that's why the Iraq War and other wars have been heavily funded by corporations who pay corporations who pay politicians to vote on specific measures when it comes to wars, in the case of a missile company. And then there are other examples as well. And so if we go into the oil and gas lobby, up here I have a key: Democrats, Republicans, liberal, conservative, nonpartisan. This is the amount of money that goes into politics just in the oil and petroleum industry. So Koch Industries puts about $23 million, gives it to mostly conservative and Republican groups, and then all these other like Chevron, which you've probably heard of, American Petroleum Institute, Samson Energy, that being the only one that gives money to Democrats and liberal groups, but the rest of them all being to conservative groups. And you see the vast amounts of money: 23 million, 7, 5, 4. These are vast amounts of money that are going into the pockets of our politicians. Because what these industries are really doing is being like, hey, I'll pay you money to fund your campaign, and then you, as someone who's getting money from the oil and gas lobby, is going to vote on measures that support us and don't put us out of business. And that's why you see a lot of these corporations giving to Republicans, as Republicans are mostly against, say, climate change or a green movement of any sort. And thus they continue to do as these oil and gas lobbies want them to do, which is put them in business with fossil fuels, keep that going so that the industries can have their money. That's just one example. Now you see this, and then if we look at this, this is the amount that each of these senators gets from specifically, again, the oil and gas lobby. So Joe Manchin, who's a Democrat, rather a dino from West Virginia, he is the top paid member of Congress by the oil and gas lobby. He gets over $700,000 from the oil and gas lobby. Kevin McCarthy, August Fluger, James Langford, Lisa Murkowski, all these people coming in second, third, fourth, and fifth. But Joe Manchin being the first and premier person being fed money by the oil and gas lobby. That's why you saw, for example, that Joe Manchin refused to vote on a few bills that Joe Biden presented to the Senate in 2021. He wanted the Build Back Better plan to be passed and other bills of that sort that improve environmental standards. But Joe Manchin voted against that without straying away from the Democrats because, again, these industries that fuel his campaigns made him do so because they want that, because obviously the oil and gas lobby doesn't want more movement towards the green movement at all, rather the opposite. And so that's what's really interesting about politics, is that if you have money, you get to play in the game. Even if you're not elected to Congress, you can still have say. And it's not just the oil and gas lobby. There are different lobbies, some that pertain mostly to Democrats, some that pertain mostly to Republicans, some that aren't really on partisan lines, more ideological lines, whatever it may be. There are lobbies for basically any industry. And speaking about that, we have pharmaceuticals and health products. Those are the top industry that fuels money into Congress, as expected. At least I expected it. And then you see electronics, insurance, securities, investment, business, real estate, oil and gas is down here, hospitals, all these different sectors of the economy that are all taking part in Congress through money. So really, it's not when obviously government participation is really important, and that's why we should be participating more and more in government so that we can vote to keep these types of businesses out of government, which Citizens United has made very hard. Check out a video on that Supreme case if you want. But really, these corporations have so much money being fueled into the system that they're overpowering our votes as actual constituents, actual people in the country that should be the ones deciding what our representatives actually vote for, when it's not really us, because who cares about what the constituents of Joe Manchin thinks when there are all these different lobbying groups, and specifically the oil and gas industry, that's paying him almost $700,000. He's going to listen to them rather to his own constituents, because they're the ones keeping him in office. Because, and specifically, this isn't as much of a problem in the Senate as it is in the House, but representatives in the House are only there for 2 years. They're elected to 2-year terms. And so about 3-4 months after they are elected, they're back on the campaign trails trying to raise money for their next election cycle. They're always running up for re-election. There's never a break for them. And that's why you see somewhat of a move to increase the terms in the House to 4 years. I don't know how much power steam that's getting, because obviously that would need an amendment to the Constitution. Obviously, that's a whole large and convoluted process that many are opposed to. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that there's not much support for it, even though you've seen it bubbling up the past few years. But anyways, the people in the House, the representatives of the House, are always up for re-election. And so them specifically, they really do need the money coming from the lobbyists. And so what is the solution to this? Because obviously it's this huge problem that these corporations have more power in the government and have more sway over our elected representatives than we do. So what's the solution? Well, there are a couple things. First of all, having stricter laws on PACs and super PACs and limiting the amount of money that can be donated to a single company or person. Obviously, Citizens United Supreme Court case decided in, 2011, 2012, somewhere around there, made it incredibly hard or rather made it easier for corporations to donate unlimited amounts of funds to campaigns, because they're treated as human entities rather than corporations under the law. We have to restrict the power in both money in our electing our leaders and the decisions that they make. And this is pretty clear throughout this presentation. We also can increase the salaries of Congress people. So this is something that I think is really interesting because we don't want to increase their wages because, first of all, there's like two sides to the coin, right? We don't want to increase their wages because otherwise they have this like it's how should I explain this? We don't want to increase the salaries because then it's more of a working politician. If you've heard the term career politician, it's used a lot when there's someone running for office who is outside of the political sphere. For example, Donald Trump in 2016. He's not a career politician, obviously, versus, say, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Grassley, Chuck Schumer. Those are really people who are career politicians because their entire careers have been based around politics. And if they don't win an election, they're losing a job instead of just losing the representation and the votes of the people, of their constituents. But on the other side of the coin, by increasing salaries, we make it less necessary for our representatives to take money from these organizations because that's all the only reason they take money is for their reelection campaigns, right? So if we increase their salaries and there's no need to take the money because now they have more money for their election campaigns, then you kind of take the party out of you take the lobbyists out of the equation. Again, they won't have to take money from lobbyists or corporations. And then lastly, increasing the political literacy of our communities to elect better candidates. This is really the goal of YPAC as a whole, increasing the political literacy of our country, educating people on politics. Hopefully you've learned something from this, and I'm going to show you guys a way to interact with your local representatives as well at the end of this presentation. But just I think by learning who your representatives are, what type of companies they're getting money from, and hearing out the opposition. People like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Grassley, which I talked about earlier, they have been in politics for a really long time, right? And they don't see much opposition. Nancy Pelosi is not going to lose to any other person. That's just a fact, okay? No matter if it's another Democrat or Republican, she has been in office so long that the constituents of her district in San Francisco are going to vote for her no matter what. But that should change in some way. If you see an opposition group, even if your member of Congress or of the House or the Senate has been in there for a long time, hear them out, see what they're trying to say instead of just voting for the status quo over and over again. Cause as well, finding your representatives. First of all, you can go to really any of your representatives, the federal ones. I put in a random address in Texas for this, but we have Dan Patrick, all these different people. And if we go to, say, Ted Cruz, one of the senators of Texas, we can see the bills that he's sponsoring. And again, this is from Common Cause. If you search in Find Your Representatives Common Cause into Google, you'll probably see this pop up. Put in your address and you get all these results, your zip code, whatever it may be. And Ted Cruz. Now you get the bills that he's sponsoring, the bills that he's recently introduced. This one he introduced about a week ago. A bill to amend the Omnibus Crime Control and Safe Streets, blah, blah. You see all the bills he's introducing. And then you can also see who's contributing to his campaigns, which is really the biggest part of this lecture here, is who is donating and contributing to Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz has gotten $66 million. That's a lot. That's all money going into his campaign for him to remain in office by ads, other campaign methods of spreading his image, whatever it may be. But you see, these are like smaller PACs. But the big industry PACs are retired Republicans, conservative. By PACs, it's this much. By employees, it's this much. You can see the oil and gas lobby giving him over $100,000, and on, right? You can see how much money is being fueled into his campaign by PACs and super PACs. So that's that. And then the source of both of them is Open Secrets. I really love Open Secrets. They're an amazing place to look at. Again, you can look at here too after you find your representatives, or if you already know them on a Common Cause, you can then go to Open Secrets. Their entire goal is following the money in politics, which I think is very important that we do so. So you see that his big campaign donors are mostly Republican, conservative, retired. You see how much money he's spending, and not just for him, but also, say, we go to Chuck Schumer, right? his contributions, $41 million from all these different groups. And so again, if we go to his Open Secrets page, which this is available for, I think, all the members of the Senate, the House, and then I don't know how local they get, probably not too much because that's a lot of work, but possibly. But you see the industries that are fueling his election cycles, the sectors, how much he's using and spending, everything like that. So please check this out. It's a really interesting source to learn more about your representatives and how they're spending their money, where they're getting their money from. Because it's really important to say, for example, let me just check this out. Okay, Quantum Energy Partners. I have no idea what this company is, but let's just check it out together, right? Okay, so it's a private equity firm based on the energy industry. Well, energy industry is pretty vague, right? And I'm going down this rabbit hole with you guys to learn more about this. Okay, sustainable ecosystem, energy ecosystem. So Ted Cruz is getting money from this corporation who's paying him to focus on more green deals, right? So if you're not in favor of that, if you're more in favor of fossil fuels, then maybe you're not going to vote for Ted Cruz next election cycle because you see that he's being paid by, a green energy company. And the rest of them too. Really, I think this is an amazing source, both Common Cause and Open Secrets, to learn more about your elected representatives. I hope you guys learned something today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.